All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. I'm your host, Bob Long, Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Always good to have you guys out there listening. If you're listening, that means you're probably in the playoffs, and that's a good thing. We're glad you are, and hopefully the consistency, which has been rough this year, there may have been consistency in some of the players' performances, consistency in staying on the field, staying out of COVID, staying healthy. Big difference. Whole doom story this year for that. So, I think we all can just write off 2020 and move forward. And, the consistency guide will probably still have the good information, but it's going to be hard to really pin down good trends and stuff. But, we'll get it out there come this spring. But we're glad you obviously stayed along with us all season long so far. And as always, on the other side of the glass, my good friend Ron Rigney. So, Ron, how's it going down south?
Okay, I think it's a question of these guys when they're picking to be inconsistent. I think that at least in my case, the Kyler Murrays of the world and some of these guys I have in my lineup, they're picking just the wrong time of year
Yeah.
to throw up these inconsistent games when I need consistency in my life, especially in these playoffs. We need that playoff consistency.
Yeah. No
Not happening.
question. And like you said, just a few weeks ago, I think I think it was basically Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, all them 10 for 10, I think. And now last 3 weeks, Wilson and Murray both three straight clunkers. Not good, especially when they've been doing so well for all year, and then you get, like you said, either getting close to getting in the playoffs, or you're in the playoffs and you're playing a playoff game this past week, and they throw up a clunker on you. The leagues that I made the playoffs in and have, at least moved on in some is because I had Patrick Mahomes. That's really what it's come down to. And, surprise, surprise, guess who's back at the number one top of the list in both total points and consistency? There he is, Patrick Mahomes. Certainly not setting any world records like he did, a couple years ago with fantasy points, but man, he's a guy you can count on. We talked a little bit with David Katari, who's been on with us. David's a little under the weather. He's worried his mom and him might both have COVID together. He lives at home with his mom. But so we're hoping the best for him. He couldn't make it tonight, said he wasn't feeling well. So hopefully we'll get him back and healthy next week, and him and his mom doing okay. But, he talked about making sure you draft Travis Kelce in the, second round or whatever next year. I'm starting to think you do them both. You just pick Kelce and Mahomes in round 2 and 3, and you know what you have. You get your first round pick, and or middle of the first round pick, and come back and get those two guys. That may not be as dumb as we used to think when it comes to getting quarterbacks early and getting tight ends early. But those two guys are proving every year that they're certainly well worth it. So as we look at the rest of the quarterbacks, I think we've already touched on Mahomes, Murray, and Wilson, and how Murray and Wilson have dropped off, but Aaron Rodgers has not. He's 12 of 13, 92%. He's been playing well, had another big week this past week. Did you have Aaron Rodgers? I know that we hated on him, literally just despised him in the magazine. We just felt that, he just had such a down year last year. They were focused so much on the run game and the defense, and, then they go out and get Jordan Love, and boy, that put a chip on Aaron Rodgers' shoulder. And, not only is he getting the State Farm, discounts, but this guy is setting the fantasy world on fire. Him and Mahomes are really the two that are probably carrying a lot of teams through the playoffs right now.
Well, he's getting those Rogers rates from State Farm
That's it, the Rodgers
every week,
race.
the Rogers rates. So I only have one share of him. I have him in a two quarterback dynasty, and I think I pair him usually. I've been
Nice.
pairing him with Taysom Hill the last couple of weeks, and that's worked out okay. It wasn't so great last week, but it's been all right. But I don't have a lot of him. But just as a football fan, and I kind of harp on this every week. But with as much as Aaron Rodgers is on national TV, he's just so much fun to watch this year. And Devontae Adams is playing out of his mind. We'll talk about him when we go over receivers. But we talked about it a little bit off air. The guys that just came out and killed us this last weekend. Marquez Valdez-Scantling was a guy that came out of nowhere and put up 20 fantasy points on you. So he's got weapons across the board. I can't help but watch him though and just wonder, what that offense would be like instead of going Jordan Love. Maybe if they would have traded into that back into the first round or even to that mid part of the first round and grabbed one of those receivers,
Oh,
like a
yeah.
Henry Ruggs or like a T. Higgins that slid
Judy
even
or right,
further.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd hate to see what that offense would be like this season,
Oof.
because those guys are succeeding without, Judy and CeeDee Lamb, especially without consistent quarterback play. Those guys are still playing well. Imagine
Yeah.
them in Green Bay, green and yellow. It'd be awesome. So a lot of fun to watch, for not necessarily from a fantasy standpoint. If you do have them on your fantasy team, you're probably sitting here in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, definitely. As we go down the list, as I mentioned, I guess I haven't mentioned, I mentioned a little bit about the inconsistency this year. Quarterbacks used to be pretty deep when it came to consistency, really, as a group, had been picking it up heading into this year. But this year, again, I'm going to blame part of it on COVID and just lack of preparation, the injuries to so many running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, quarterbacks themselves getting hurt. I mean, there are only four quarterbacks over 70%. And we've already talked about all four: Mahomes, Rodgers, Murray, Wilson. I mean, after that, you're 69% or less. Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson at 69%, Justin Herbert at 67. And that is, after that, you get into Gardner Minshew and Fitzpatrick at 63% and Kirk Cousins at 62%. These are your top, most consistent quarterbacks this year. Notice we didn't mention Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, Matthew Stafford, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, go on and on and on. Wow. Do we just write this off to not inconsistency, the lack of playing time and chemistry and preparation preseason, guys being set out because they've been exposed to COVID? The only thing we can write it off to, right? I mean, we just don't normally see some of these veterans being this poor when it comes to consistency. They may have their game, they may not have been, I certainly wasn't expecting them to all be 80% or even, 75% or higher. But man, Matt Ryan's at 38%, Goff's at 38%, Roethlisberger 46. Lamar Jackson had a great game the other night. He's now 10th in total points, but he's still 50%. I mean, do we just say, okay, it is what it is. We move forward. All these guys will get semi back to normal. Everybody will be healthy. We'll all have vaccines. We'll all be good. Is that what we just have to move forward and write this off as that we couldn't control this?
Man, I hope that's what it is, because I hope this isn't something that we have to look at every year as far as,
Yeah.
you relying on those backup quarterbacks. One quarterback league, I don't know if I've ever had a year where my backup has been so important to me, and it's automatically almost become a streaming situation when I really didn't plan it that way. I mean, I know you go into some drafts where you don't want to invest that auction money, or you don't want to invest those picks in those high quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. I know a lot of Kings Classic guys did that. They went for, the Bradys and the Tannehills and the Carrs, and they went for those guys to mix and match. But you ended up probably doing that out of necessity, not necessarily because it was part of your game plan. And two, we've had a couple injuries here and there, like with Breeze, Dak Prescott. So we've had some guys too get dinged up. But I will say, it seems like we've talked, especially last year and then on into this year, about how we kind of wondered, if the Drew Breeses and Tom Brady's of the world were starting to slip a little bit down that consistency ladder. Because if you recall, we've had some instances where those guys have had some really cake matchups the last 2-3+ years, and they've not shown up. So it could be we're kind of starting to see some of these guys maybe getting to that point where we need to start kind of thinking about, is this the end of the road? I don't know. But it sucks when you spend this money on a guy, or you spend that pick on a guy, and you have two quarterbacks that you're streaming, and they're both 50 and 54%.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely not what you're looking for in the draft.
Right. And then you start picking wrong and start, you like this past week, let's say you did not start Derek Carr and you started, Kyler Murray. Well, I guess you wouldn't do that anyway, but you get the point. Then you start picking the wrong weeks.
Well, honestly, I wouldn't rule that. I wouldn't quite rule that out with the year that we are in. You see, that sounds kind of far fetched, but I don't know how unrealistic that might be.
Yeah, no, I hear you. All right, let's move on to the running back positions. And, there's at least a little bit. I think the running backs and the quarter or running backs and wide receivers seem to have a little bit more consistency overall. Yeah, there's certainly more of numbers anyway, but I think at least, there's, a top 15 to 20 that are over 65%, probably a top 15 over 70%. So at least there's, solid numbers there. Some of them are guys we counted on, some that are not. But let's take a look at them. At the top of the list, still a perfect season so far. Dalvin Cook, second in total points, 12 for 12. He's only he's about 12 points behind Alvin Kamara, who has played one more game. So that's where the total points certainly come into play. Kamara is at 85%. He's dropped off a little bit. He was perfect just a couple weeks ago. So he's dropped off a couple bit. And most of it's because of Taysom Hill being the quarterback. They're not, utilizing Kamara as much as they had been. With Breeze, Hill's been taking some of the rushing touchdowns because he's an a-hole, and taken away from all of us Kamara owners. So we hate him. But overall, that's just the way it's been. But, we've got guys that we expect to be up there. Chris Carson, a quiet 89%, but he's missed a few games. He's only played 9. Aaron Jones, 82%. Certainly, better than we expected. I think he's definitely going to be a guy I think I'm going to have higher in the list next year. Mm-hmm. I think we kind of looked at him and said, well, last year they were still kind of using Jamal Williams way too much and that kind of stuff. And then they got A.J. Dillon. We thought, oh, God, here we go. Now we're going to have a three-headed monster. And they didn't use any of those guys. Aaron Jones has been the man, fifth in total points. And like I said, 82% consistency. So certainly a guy that will probably be, in my mind, a late first-round pick. Nick Chubb has been a stud since he came back healthy. The fact that he's 17th in total points and has missed, 4 or 5 games already shows you how good he can be. He certainly has proven himself worthy. Derrick Henry, third in total points, only 77% consistent, which really surprised me. You gotta love Henry. He's certainly out there every game, but I was actually surprised when I saw that he's actually missed a few. I don't think he's missing them by much, but he's missed a few. Any comments on any of those guys?
Well, one guy that I think that you went down the list and you didn't give really any love to is our guy there at number 6, Miles freaking Gaskin is up there at 80.
I was talking about the guys we expected to be there. I wanted you to get your comments on those guys, and then we're going to come back to the guys that people didn't expect to see there.
All right. Well, I'll save Miles Gaskin for a little bit later here. McCaffrey owners, that hurts so bad to see him out. And honestly, why did they bring him back at this point? He's doubtful for this week again. Yeah. I will say, though, I have benefited greatly from having Mike Davis in a couple of lineups that I'm still alive in. So that has been kind of the silver lining of that as a fantasy owner. He's 8th in total points, not the most consistent in the world, but he's a great fill-in of a guy that you basically spent nothing on. I don't own any Alvin Kamara shares, but one thing that this might lead to is maybe if Taysom Hill struggles a little bit, maybe you see them lean on Alvin Kamara this week and next week a little bit more, right when you need it in those key playoff matchups. So that could be something that we can see. And Chris Carson's a guy, I think you said it perfectly, Bob, he is a quiet, underrated 89%. I know he's missed a couple games, but, man, when he has been in there, he's been good. He's been scoring touchdowns on the ground. He's been catching touchdowns from Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson trusts him. He's awesome if he's on the field. It's just a matter of him getting on the field, which we know going in, that's going to be something difficult for him to do. The guy that I like a lot that I actually got to watch play a little bit this past weekend when they were actually playing the Packers was DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is a guy that when he's healthy too, I've been super, super impressed with the burst, with the ability to catch a ball out of the backfield. And he's a guy that I'm going to be pretty big on heading into next season, especially if they decide to not bring back Adrian Peterson or depending on what happens with Kerryon Johnson.
Right. Yeah, I think Kerryon Johnson's pretty much done in that system. He may be either released or traded to a team that give him a second chance. But no, yeah, all good shots there. All right, so let's talk about the guys that we didn't expect to see up here. Number 4 in total points, 92% consistency. Everybody was on this train. And by everybody, I mean nobody, because it's James Robinson. When he had a first couple games, I'm like, oh, all right, this kid's not too bad. But he's a young kid. He's not going to do much. I mean, come on. He's no Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And there we are with him being 70 points ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Said fourth in total points, 92% consistency. This guy has to be this good because it's not like there's any quarterbacks there. I mean, Gardner's been out for what, 6 weeks?
Yeah.
I don't even remember who was their starting quarterback.
Well, they went with Mike Glennon.
Mike Glennon for a while, and who else? They had some other.
Jake Luton got a start
Luton,
in there, and then it's back to old Gardner Minshew, I believe, right now.
Oh, I think you're right. Minshew did come back this week, but yeah. So I mean, this guy's had no quarterback. So you think teams would just like, all right, we'll just stop James Robinson. Well, obviously they can't because he's still at 92%, still fourth in total points. So definitely somebody worth looking into next year, I guess, regardless of quarterback. We'll just have to wait and see. As you mentioned, the aforementioned Myles Gaskin, 7 of 8, 88% since he's gotten the starting job. Again, a guy that's just pretty much come out of nowhere. I mean, these guys kind of remind me of the Philip Lindsay from a few years ago. We're like, Philip who? And the only reason you knew about it because somebody mentioned to him in your Uber you were driving. I remember that story. That was fantastic. But yet you kept it to yourself and didn't tell anybody until like week 8.
Well, it's not that I can't. Well, yeah, it's not that I kept it to myself. It's because I didn't do it and nobody else did it either.
Right, exactly. So like I said, those two guys are up there. Don, we talked. I mean, Helaire we expected. I mean, if you're going to be a star quarter or star running back and you get to play in the most powerful offense with 17,000 weapons that you have to worry about stopping, certainly you should be productive. If he wasn't, then I think we all would have been very disappointed. Wow,
but I will say though, for a guy that was most likely the 4th, 5th, or 6th, probably, well, I should say 5th, 6th pick in your draft, 14th in total points, I would have thought he might have had a few more total points than that. The consistency is definitely there. He's putting it up in the consistent part of it, but would have thought he'd have been a little bit higher than 14th.
Well, and, if you take a step back and look at this team, I mean, he's productive, he's consistent, but because of the way Andy Reid and that offense runs, Tyreek and Kelsey are the two main guys that are going to get the ball the most. Everybody else is second nature. And I think that goes along with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They played the Jets a couple weeks ago, and I said, well, I don't think Mahomes is going to do that well. I think Edwards will have a big game because we were talking about in the prop bets. Because I said they don't need to throw the ball to beat the Jets. Well, guess what? Mahomes went out and threw like 5 touchdowns. So they did throw the ball. They didn't have to, but they did. So that I don't think Edwards-Helaire had that great of a game rushing because he threw 5 touchdowns. Now, he might get a rushing touchdown, which will certainly help. And that's probably why he's 14th in total points. And, his consistency isn't that bad. But I just don't know if they, are ever going to use a running back, like Cleveland uses Chubb or Dalvin Cook is used in Minnesota, where it's them first and the passing game is second. It's Mahomes, so it's passing first and run to take the edge off the pass. So maybe we'll never see Edwards-Helaire be a top 12 in total points or maybe a top 10 in total points, but you're going to get consistency. The key is going to be where's he going to get drafted in next year's draft. If he's still going mid first round or even 7, 8, 9, I don't think I'm picking him. I'll pick Aaron Jones. I'll pick Nick Chubb. I'll pick, one of those guys before I'm going to take Helaire. Now if I can get Helaire at the turn at number, end of the first round or early second round, yeah, now I'm a little more excited about it because I'm pairing him probably with a Chubb or, Aaron Jones or somebody like that. But to rely on him as being my number one, might be a little bit tougher than we think. So, and especially if I pick Mahomes and Kelsey right after that anyway. So now I got way too many Chiefs. All right. So we moved down the list. A lot of guys have been moving up recently. David Montgomery has been on fire since I think I put it in the article, this last week's article, that since Tariq Cohen went down, David Montgomery was like 7 of 8 consistency wise, or 6 of 7, something like that. Definitely, now that they don't have Tariq Cohen in the way, um, Dave Montgomery's proving what we all thought about him. And now that, with Cohen not there, Matt Nagy doesn't have much of a choice. I mean, he's actually trying to use Cordell Patterson as a running back. That's fun. So, I think Montgomery's proving. So this could be another guy that, we all want to keep in the back of our mind next year. Cohen moves on, he's getting up there in years. He might be moving on free agency or even just age wise. Maybe we could finally see Montgomery get free to run rampant. He might be a really nice RB2 pick for you next year too. What else of the guys that are in there? There's another guy, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, all of these guys, certainly up and coming running backs as we head into next year. Any of the three that you seem to have a little more love for than others?
Well, Dave Montgomery, I like what he's put up, but the thing with him is the last 3 weeks, he's had some pretty cake matchups as far as the Texans and Detroit and Green Bay. So he's put up some big numbers against them, which he should. I want to see him put up those numbers against, those middle of the road defenses that aren't going to just lay down and let him have yards. But it is encouraging to see him, especially get in the end zone a few times as well. I'm a big Antonio Gibson fan. We talked a bit about him a little bit last week. And the guy is just, he missed last week with the injury. He's questionable heading into, what could be your second round of your playoffs this week. So hopefully he'll be back. You need him. But he's a guy that's got a nose for the end zone. He makes big plays. There was a lot of speculation about him coming out of college. Didn't play consistently at receiver or running back, kind of was all over the place. I think he's proven that he's a nice weapon out of the backfield. So I'd say of those guys, I'd say probably Antonio Gibson's my favorite heading into next year.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. A lot of good ones. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot. And then, as we look down the list, this is where we start kind of rolling our Zeke Elliott, Kareem Hunt, Ronald Jones, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Todd Gurley, David Johnson, a lot of guys that we were all counting on. Some of it is injuries like Mostert. Some of it is just poor play or injuries to other players on their team. Zeke. It was funny on Saturday, Colby and I were doing the prop bets, and I think it was 100 yards of rushing yards or something for Zeke. Anyway, and Colby, he had it on his best bets, and I said, "Did you watch him play last week on TV? Because he looked like he wanted to be everywhere else in this world except on that football field." I go, he did not look like he actually cared. He's like, well, he's playing the Bengals and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I get it, but I'm telling you, I'd be worried about him. Well, he didn't have a very good game. I know that. So anyway, but again, you look at this and go, well, where is he going to go next year? I mean, we assume he'll go back near the top, but, hard to have any faith there. I mean, Ronald Jones has looked great at times, but he's 13th in total points, certainly better than anybody expected. I mean, I was all over Rojo, but that was before they went and got Fournette and screwed that up. So, if they let Fournette walk, which I assume that Tampa Bay will, maybe Jones can, see the ball more and be a little bit more consistent next year. That would be great. So he could come at some good value. Any guys in that 60 to 50 to 60 range that you're like, I'm in on them next year. I think this year was just, it is what it is.
It's hard for me, once I get burned by a guy, it's hard for me to get back on that wagon. And Zeke Elliott is a guy that I have. Luckily, both teams I have him on have made the playoffs, and I'm very surprised. Not with the consistency that he's got here at 62%, but I'm surprised that he's sixth in total points. That to me is an amazing stat.
Yeah.
For when I've watched him, I'm the same as you. I've watched him play, and just doesn't look like he's interested. He's got the Niners coming up this week, so it's probably going to be another clunker for him because they can't throw the ball very well. Ronald Jones is a guy, it seems like for whatever reason, Bruce Arians is trying to hand him that job on a silver platter, and he cannot take it and seize it. He has these games where he looks great, and then he'll fumble or he'll drop a pass or he'll miss a block, and he's back standing over on the sideline. By the way, if you do own Ronald Jones, if you haven't seen this yet, probably not going to play this week. So you're probably, if you do have Fournette, Probably
Mm,
going to get to fire him up, and you might get something out of him finally. I believe I
right.
believe I read that Ronald Jones had the same broken finger surgery that Chris Godwin had, missed a game, so it looks like Ronald Jones will miss a game
Ugh,
coming up. So
gotcha.
if you handcuff Fournette or you have Fournette on your bench, you might actually be getting a little use out of him this week.
Nice. All right, let's move into the wide receiver position. And seems like every position, well, actually, every position except running back, when you pick up the consistency list year to date, consistency numbers, guess what? There's a Kansas City Chief at the top of them. Tyreek Hill is at the top of the wide receivers. He just became the first wide receiver to eclipse 300 points for the year, first in total points. Not far behind him is Devontae Adams at 288.4. So definitely those two are really the two that are duking it out for the top spot. It drops off about 42 points to Stephon Diggs after that. So those two are duking it out for the coveted Mr. Consistency Award at, from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. I'm sure they're very aware of this scenario. So they're at 92, 91%. Either one of these guys, I mean, probably be late first round picks next year. I could see Tyreek going in the first round. He used to be a second round guy. His consistency is definitely way up for him. I mean, he's normally been in the 75 to 80. Just again, because Kansas City spreads the ball around a lot. But man, Tyreek has been a monster this year. Of course, he had that huge game where he had like 200 yards receiving in the first half. Definitely been on
Try
fire.
first quarter. He
Oh,
had
first quarter.
first
That's what it
quarter.
was. First quarter.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, he's definitely had some big games, and that's why he's, ahead in total points. Devontae's had his games as well. I mean, either one of these guys, it doesn't matter, right? You just take one of them, either late first round, early second, if you're lucky enough to get them early second. I don't think they're going to fall out of the first round coming up in 2021. Do you agree?
No, not at all. And Devontae Adams, I'm all 100% back in on Devontae Adams. I was kind of iffy going into this season, but once he shook up the injury, and like we said, as much as he's been on national TV, he's to me he's the top receiver in the league right now as far as
Mm-hmm.
pure receiver. I don't think I give it to Tyreek Hill because I think Tyreek Hill is just another breed as far as he is a good receiver, but he's insanely fast. And I
Right.
know that's nothing we don't already know. But
Right.
if you've not watched the Chiefs and you've not looked up Tyreek Hill highlights, especially from this year, and
Mm.
just seen how he has that extra gear that he kicks in,
Mm-hmm.
it's not human. It's unbelievable. I don't know
Right.
if I've seen a guy with that kind of burst since Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl in the '90s. I
Yeah.
mean, this guy is all over it. And we talked a little bit about too. You get Mahomes, you get Kelsey. It's not a bad thing if you get Hill and Mahomes either. That's a pretty nice stack as well.
Yeah. No question about it. So as we go down the list, I think now we start looking at some guys that we're surprised to see this high up. I think I've said this every week, but I'll say it again. I'm still shocked that Stephon Diggs is still doing as well as he is. He's third in total points, 85% consistency. I just wasn't sure that he could handle the number one role. I was, when he was sharing in Minnesota with Adam Thielen, it seemed like he kind of whined a lot and, didn't get the ball, and I should get the ball more. And I guess Buffalo has done everything they can to give him the ball more, and he's certainly proven that he's worth it. And I don't think there's anybody who's going to question that. DK Metcalf, I mean, I feel like that this guy, I think I said this early in the year, how I mentioned how any wide receiver who goes over that 60% threshold as a rookie, almost all of them, if not all of them, seem to move on to being better and better right from the start, from that start. Like you don't see a lot of guys like you do at running back position that have that big rookie season and then drop off and not necessarily disappear, but certainly kind of fall out of favor where they're not as fantasy productive. Wide receiver, a whole different story. Metcalf was there just a year or so ago. Boom, here he is, 85%, fourth in total points. Calvin Ridley now is up there now. AJ Brown, Kenny Galladay. I mean, all these guys were first year rookie, 60% and higher, and here they are, killing it at the top of the list. So definitely something we'll look at. As we look at some of the, I'll scroll down just to kind of bring up some guys that are over 60%. in their rookie season, and we have guys like I'm trying to find them. Da, 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 da. I saw one, and I prove it. The one that's surprising is Brandon Ayuk, who's 70%. But we've got Deontay Johnson, we got Chase Claypool, Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins. I mean, they're all close to 60. Maybe they'll hit it, maybe they won't. But all these guys certainly are getting close and are proving they might be worth, certainly moving, being somebody that'll step up in even their second year. But like I said, guys like Metcalf and Ridley and some of these guys have all, are all keep picking up year after year, improve once you have that good rookie season, what you can expect out of them moving forward. So of those guys, anybody you want to talk about? I think our biggest surprise is, of course, the fantasy locus, Amari Cooper still being consistent. Again, this just proves why 2020 is just not a normal year.
I think the guy that I want to highlight, just kind of in the middle of the pack here, and this is somebody too that we've been waiting for that breakout, for a couple years. Guy was a first round pick, top 10 pick, hasn't had the impact that we think a top 10 pick would have, but he's definitely showing signs of life, and that's Corey Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it a big breakout, but with him coming in at 73% consistent, top 30 in total points, not setting the world on fire, but he's kind of what you want from that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, especially because that's probably where most of you have him, is at wide receiver 3, a guy that you can plug in that's 73% consistent. We'll take that all day long. But also another guy that's dropped down the ranks quite a bit, and that's DeAndre Hopkins at 69%. Still 6th in total points, still putting up big games. But, I think he goes, obviously, as Kyler Murray goes. And,
right.
Kyler Murray's kind of had some clunkers, like we said before. Kyler Murray's not running it as much, and I think that might hurt a little bit because defenses maybe aren't necessarily respecting the run as much. I also wonder if Kyler Murray is fully healthy. I know he banged up his shoulder a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
He hasn't missed any time with that, but I wonder if that's something that's affecting him. But that's definitely affected DeAndre Hopkins to a pretty big extent when we consider DeAndre Hopkins has been the most consistent guy that we've had, I think,
right.
Like 3 out of the last 4 years, if I remember right.
Well, I think Colby brought this up Saturday when we were talking about Hopkins and Kyler Murray and them, and he said, his shoulder certainly it looks like it's bothering him, and it's really affected Hopkins and getting the ball deep, getting those crisp passes off to him. And it was, really been affecting him. And I think you're right. It's very obvious that it's been affecting him because just like Murray has dropped off the last few weeks, so is Hopkins, down to now 9 of 13, like you said, 69% after, he was right up there, at 80, 70, or around the 80% range prior to the last few weeks. So definitely one. And going back to Corey Davis, I mean, I think what's even more surprising is that A.J. Brown, who's 18th in total points, is 82% consistent. So you've got, 2 wide receivers for the Titans that are over 70%. That's surprising when you also have Derrick Henry on the other side at 80% as a running back. Usually you don't have those kind of combinations where you've got 2 receivers and a running back all over, 70% consistent. It doesn't happen often. Kansas City might be one. That's about, but very few other teams usually put that together. Seattle, of course, has Metcalf and Chris Carson, but that's only one. The other guy is Tyler Lockett, who's down at 54%. So impressive to see Tennessee from a fantasy perspective being that productive from a consistency standpoint. So certainly something to keep an eye on, especially when you look at Ryan Tannehill, and he is at 54% consistency. So something's working on at least his supplemental people there. That's for sure. As we kind of wrap up the wide receivers, anybody else? I mean, I know we've had a lot of disappointments this year, but overall, like I said, I feel like the wide receivers are not too bad overall as a group. Even though we've seen some drop off recently. But a lot of the big names just haven't been up there this year. Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, as we mentioned, Landry, who's usually 75% every year, has tailed off. He's only 54%. DJ Chark, who had a really nice year last year. Odell Beckham, 43%. Michael Thomas, 43%. I realize there's been injuries, but he has not done much in his return. But, that's also right at the time when they lost Drew Brees. So that certainly doesn't help either. Anybody there that you feel like maybe we're not going to see improvements moving forward in 2021? They may be getting near the end. I mean, Landry's one that I think of like, he certainly has always been right there, but just not been as consistent this year. And I get it. Baker Mayfield's not consistent either, and they're a run first team. But maybe that's what I mean by maybe his time has come from a fantasy perspective. He's just not going to be that productive 75% guy you could count on every year, that he's going to kind of fall out of favor.
Well, and it's something too where I think that it's certain guys are they're just meant to be nicked up all the time. Julio Jones is a guy that's nicked up all the time.
Right.
DJ Chark has looked awesome when he's been in the lineup, but it's getting him in the lineup. Michael Thomas missed a ton of time. I'll tell you a guy though that we need to put on a milk carton that I'm hugely shocked. That we haven't gotten anything from him as far as he's injured. Didn't show up when he was playing. That's Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman's a guy that, we were big on in a PPR format that you get for next to nothing. And he paid off last year big time, done nothing for you this year. He's a guy that you've jettisoned onto waivers weeks and weeks ago.
Right. Yeah, no. And I mean, again, we knew that Cam Newton wasn't the answer. I mean, he runs the ball mostly himself. He's not a very good passer, hasn't been for years. But yeah, I thought for sure if anybody was smart enough to go, hey, I've got this Edelman guy, and he always got open for Tom Brady. So, but I don't know. It just hasn't been a good year for New England. We saw it coming. We just didn't know it'd be this bad. All right, let's move on to the last here at our tight end position. And Kelsey, number one, total points, 62%, 62 points ahead. Second place, Darren Waller, and that was after Waller's huge week a while back, or a week or so ago. But still hanging with Travis Kelsey at 92% consistency. Third total points, even though third is 100 points behind first. For those of you keeping track at home. Still 92% consistent. Again, not putting up a ton of points. So I shouldn't say he's third. I mean, it's respectable. Nothing to be disappointed about. But yeah, he just kind of keeps hanging there every week, consistency wise. Again, the tough part is going to be predicting him next year. Is this a Kenny Galladay has missed 9 games now, something like that. I mean, is this why Hawkinson's getting the ball? I mean, if Stafford and Galladay and Jones are all healthy, is Hawkinson going to be this guy, this 92% consistency? I might have to watch some game, on the Game Pass in the off season and watch some of these games, back, look at the numbers before Galladay goes down with all the guys healthy and see, obviously he must have been earning clutch games then because he's 12 of 13. So he certainly must have been scoring. But, has it went up? Has it went down? That's kind of stuff we'll have to look at and really dive into the numbers with Hawkinson. Certainly a good value because not everybody is probably focusing on I'm sure they're seeing him at the third in total points. So that certainly puts him up there. But how some people get a little bit over edgy with tight ends when they see a guy that might be breaking out. Hawkinson be going, third round after Kelsey and Kittle go. That's not where he should go. But, if you can get him in the 5th or 6th round, might be some good value there. Certainly going to be replacing my Evan Ingram, who continuously I want to stab. I think he busted off. I don't know what he had this week. Wasn't a great week when I needed him, as always. Anyway, rest of the guys, like I said, Waller, second total points, but only 69%. And here's where, no question, tight ends have been just horribly disappointing this year. After the two guys at 92%, Waller at 69%, Kittle at 67%, but that's only in 6 games that he's played. Everybody else is 62%. Now, at 62% and fourth in total points is the alumni from Indiana State, Robert Tonyan. And we're happy to see him there. And, I mean, at this point, unless, he just gets hurt, doesn't play, I mean, he's going to be top 10, maybe top 5 in total points. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool to see it, and especially in a year where things have been so crazy, it's hard to think of him being one of the more consistent guys.
Mm-hmm.
But this just keeps driving home that point that our boy David Gutierrez talks about getting Kelsey. Now going
Mm-hmm.
back to Hawkinson, you talking about watching him on the Game Pass. One of the things that I was able to watch a little bit this weekend was Packers and
Oh,
Lions, and
Lions, right?
one of the things I was a little bit impressed with Hawkinson. I was a fan of his coming into the season anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
it looks like he's kind of got to that point where he doesn't just need to rely on his athletic ability to make plays. He can run routes and get open and find spots to get open within the defense. And that was something he did a couple times where Matthew Stafford found him, and I was pretty impressed with that. So I think he's kind of come out of that guy. He's not that guy that's touchdown dependent anymore. I think
Mm-hmm.
he's pretty solid, locked in for that 5 catches for 65 yards with potential for more. So he's definitely a guy that I'm in on. Now, I'm with
Mm-hmm.
you. I'm not paying, second, third round capital on him, and I'm not taking him above my boy Darren Waller, who in one of my leagues I had him against somebody when he had 45 points, and
Right.
it gave birth to the term that you got Wallered. So from
Love it.
now on, when you hit that 45-point mark, you got to say that you got Wallered.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Well done. We'll put that on T-shirts and trademark that real quick. Uh, Send that over to RotoWare.
There you go.
They'll make a shirt out in a heartbeat. I'm sure our boy over there will take care of us. Like I said, the rest of the group, though, man, just so much disappointment at the tight end position. Some of the guys he drafted kind of high: Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews. Fifth, sixth round, I was getting the Hunter Henrys and the Evan Ingrams. Those guys have been okay. I mean, heck, 8th in total points for Henry. Ingram's 13th, but 58% or 62% for Hunter Henry, which is actually fifth overall, fifth place. Tanyan and Hunter Henry are tied at 62%. That's sad. Evan Ingram, like I said, 54%. Hell, that's top 12. I mean, that's just, yeah. It's sickening. It really is. Dallas Goedert, 44%. Austin Hooper, which I told everybody. I hope you all listened to me when Austin Hooper, he's going to play in Cleveland. He's not going to see the ball. 40%. Mike Gesicki, that was the one that we thought we had some high hopes for. And the sad thing is he's 5th in total points, 38% consistency. Zach Ertz, only 38% consistency, missed, going to miss half the games. Tyler Higbee, 3 for 12, 25%. That certainly wasn't a guy that we were promoting. I kind of said I didn't feel like that was something that could be recaptured. But man, I didn't think he'd be this bad. I mean, he's 20th in total points. It's not like he's missed a game. He's played 12 games. I guess he's missed one. But man, it's just so much inconsistency at tight end. Like I said, and David said, this may be the year we say, look, here's 4 tight ends. You got to get one of them. Kelsey, second or third round, if you can, and we'll be there to help you through these drafts. But I think you're going to have to look at it differently, and it may be worth, again, getting Kelsey and Mahomes in the first 4 rounds. And then you just build around that because you're getting 90% out of those 2 guys. And that's what you want. That's what you need. You can argue, well, you can't do that and you're missing out on this guy and this thing. Well, you know what? Kelsey, let's look at Kelsey for a minute. Kelsey has 268 fantasy points. And where would that rank him with the wide receivers? 268 would put him 3rd. Tell me again how crazy it is to draft Travis Kelsey now in the 2nd round. 268, he's 22 points ahead of 3rd place Stephon Diggs. There you go. So, David, I know you're out there listening. I'm sure you are. And I hope you're feeling better, but I think you've just talked us all into draft Kelsey. When he could be 3rd in wide receivers, and we're sitting there going, yeah, we would draft Tyreek and Devontae Adams in the end of the 1st round. Yeah, maybe Kelsey isn't that much of a stretch then. So anyway, but all right, so there's our week 14 as we wrap it up this week. Ron, tell everybody where they can find you, about all the money you guys keep winning and consistently cashing and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, so on a little bit of hiatus from baseball. We're gonna get that going back in January after this hot stove gets fired up a little bit more with some more free agent signings and some minor league previews for you, myself and my man Van Lee over there at the Nasty Cast. But we're still football mode. We're still consistently cashing mode. I've really righted the ship towards the end of the season here. You know, my MO is always usually do well on FanDuel. I don't do so well on DK, which DK this week, I think I was zero point 0.3 points from cashing your cash game lineup, so missed that just by a hair. But the FanDuel lineup this week did really well. I got you some money in your cash game, but also if you threw it in the Millionaire Maker, I won you a couple bucks there. Now we're not able to retire off this money, but nonetheless, we did pretty well for you. So last couple
Nice.
weeks, I think I've cashed in FanDuel. So it's definitely, as the season has gone on and kind of winded down, we've definitely righted the ship over there, consistently cashing. So continue to check us out on through the end of the year for sure.
Awesome. All right. As always, you can find me at Bob_Lung on Twitter. As always, also, you can find the articles, which should be out, tomorrow or usually Thursday. We'll get them up to date. Of course, you can go as a subscriber. You can go and check out the consistency reports. They're all updated through week 13. So all the data we just threw at you tonight comes right out of that report. You can download them in Excel and save them as you're on and save them and use them as well. So that's always a cool thing to do. And as always, again, you can find me on Twitter at Bob_Lung.
Let me add something real
Please.
quick. If you want to find out what's been happening in the Kings Classic playoffs, come to Big Guy Fantasy
Yes.
Sports. We're going to have some write-ups in there in the next couple of days. You can see what happened as far as Week 1 playoffs in both the Jim Brown, the George Blanda, and the Len Dawson International Division as well. Winding it down there the next couple of weeks, see who wins those championships.
Absolutely. Yep. Good thought process on that. We're going to get those out this week as well, so you can keep up to date as those go through the playoffs. Sadly, I lost my first round playoff, but I know Ron's still alive. Colby's still alive, I think, in his. So keep duking it out in those, and we'll keep you up to date on that. So as always, for Ron Rigney, myself, thanks for stopping by. And we'll get back to you guys again next week as we start getting close to the Christmas holidays. So everybody have a great week. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.